Welcome to the Performance and Accountability Board for October, and those of you who are familiar with TV and Filmland, this is take two. We had technical issues initially. I'll start with introductions. I'm Mark Shelford, I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, and then going around the room to my left.
Chief Constable Sarah Crew.
Good afternoon, Assistant Chief Constable John Riley.
Good afternoon, Alice Ripley, Chief of Staff to the Commissioner.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Deputy Chief Constable, Nikki Watson, for all her work with Avon and Somerset Police and wish her well on her retirement. Nikki has served the force for more than 36 years and has overseen the creation of the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. She has introduced the online reporting system to reduce demand from 999 and 101, and took on the role of the gender lead, creating a working environment where women can develop and thrive. Her legacy will be a lasting one. But I'd also like to congratulate you, John, on your forthcoming appointment as the new Deputy Chief Constable. I know you bring a wealth of experience and knowledge with you, and I look forward to working with you in your new role. During this meeting, I and my Chief of Staff will be putting questions to the Chief Constable and the current Assistant Chief Constable. And this is one of the ways that I hold the Chief Constable to account in a transparent way. This meeting helps everybody to have a better understanding of how Avon and Somerset Police are performing. As you all know, Chief Constable, the first question is around topical issues. It's Hate Crime Week this week, and it's particularly relevant to everything that's going on in the world at the moment. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, can you first tell me what you're doing to encourage people to report hate crime to the police?
Thank you. I think it's right for me to say, given international events, that tackling hate crime is a priority for us here at Avon and Somerset Police. We understand the impact that it can have on individuals, but also on communities, being targeted for who you are, your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, your disability. It can have a profound effect on someone's well-being and confidence, and we are absolutely committed to protecting victims and dealing robustly with the perpetrators. Year on year, we're seeing hate crime rising. We're up 5.2%. That's another 232 offences. And we've seen relatively higher rates in the last 3 months. That usually happens at that time of the year, so we think that's seasonal. The largest type of hate crime in Avon and Somerset is racial hate crime, though the increase there is smaller at just 1.2%, and there are no patterns geographically. It's happening across the force area. Now, those rises in numbers can be happening for a variety of reasons. It could be greater awareness, including among our staff, greater public confidence and intolerance of hate crime, greater confidence among victims to report, as I said, seasonal trends, and also more accurate crime recording, something we've discussed here in this forum before. Now, Hate Crime Awareness Week runs every year in October, this year from the 14th to the 21st of October. And what it does every year is it offers a brilliant opportunity to shine a spotlight onto hate crime. And we work not alone, but with partners across Avon and Somerset to engage our staff and communities on the issue of hate crime, to listen to individuals and communities about their experiences and the impact hate crime has had, and absolutely to encourage the greater reporting of it, because even though we've seen those rises, we know it's still underreported, and that can be due to a lack of trust and confidence in policing, and we know that there are lower levels of confidence among some communities, especially diverse and minority communities. More broadly than this week alone, the work we're doing under the Race Matters banner, our race action plan, to tackle violence against women and girls, and the work we're doing to engage with all our minority communities to rebuild trust and confidence in us, I think will have an impact on people feeling empowered to come forward and report prejudice-based crime against them. Now, we want everyone to know, and this is an important message for me, that they'll be met if they come forward with a police service who will listen to them, treat them fairly, with respect, and provide a good level of service as well. And during the week, when we try to emphasise that message, there are going to be a range of activities. For example, our local policing teams are going to be looking to engage faith communities and young people throughout the force area, and I hope that gives some reassurance. The faith communities, because of what's happening internationally, but we also know that there are more local events involving young people, and violence has been a concern for us. There will be talks on those themes in schools, but there will also be visits to mosques, to synagogues, and to churches as well. We're also visiting retailers most affected by hate crime, and there will be leaflet drops, making that point about awareness and how to report in communities that are most effective. We'll be out in the day, but we'll be out at night as well, within what we call our nighttime economy in our towns and cities, trying to engage with not just members of the public, but with licensees and those people who work in the nighttime economy. And our taxi officer, and I know you spent some time with him, Commissioner, recently, will be out and about engaging with our taxi driver community as well to encourage reporting. And the core ask of the public is report to us, have confidence to do so, report directly or indirectly through partner agencies such as SARI, Crime Stoppers, Bristol Hate Crime Discrimination Services, Stop Hate Crime UK. There's also a service called True Vision. And our message is targeted not just to victims, and I think this is important, but also everyone who witnesses hate crime. Branded around, don't be a bystander. Please come forward with information if you witness a hate crime, as well as if you're a victim of one. So, in summary, we're seeing reported to us more and more reports, but we know that this is a kind of crime that is still underreported, and that trust and confidence sometimes plays a part in that. And whilst much of the work we've discussed in previous of these sessions have been about building confidence, Hate Crime Awareness Week offers us a brilliant topical opportunity to reach out to individuals and to communities most likely to be affected, and to really continue that conversation about reporting. Because if people report, we can actually take some action to help them.
Now, Chief Constable, you have alluded to it in your opening statement, but and you've also just said the importance of reporting. When these crimes are reported to the police, how are you going to ensure that you provide a victim-centred response?
Okay, and as I said, it's critically important that we treat victims in what we call a procedurally just way. That's something that we've learned from our work on rape and serious sexual offences, which has seen great feedback from victims as something that places them at the centre of investigations. But and what that means procedurally just, it means listening really well, it means treating people with fairness and respect, and it also means delivering a good level of service, doing the essential things right. And we have several strands of work in place at the moment to drive improvements to achieve that. So over the last 2 years, we've rolled out across the whole organisation 3,000 plus people, those that come into contact with the public and their leaders, called Inclusive Policing with Confidence. And that exposes officers and staff to the authentic lived experience of people who've been the victims of different crimes, types of hate crime, helping to build empathy and understanding of the impact hate crime can have on an individual and how to respond to it in a victim-centred way. The focus of our training this year is actually on the recording or not recording of hate crime incidents, which may be not crimes, but maybe there is a reason to report because maybe there's vulnerability or persistent targeting. We're also continuing to use lived experience and lived experience advisors to help us continue to better understand the impact hate crime has and how we should work to mitigate that impact. We've got 60 hate crime champions. That's an increase this year across the constabulary, and that's across a wide range of roles and ranks in directorates. Now, the champions, to give a sense of them, they act as peer ambassadors for hate crime and delivering a great service, but also as advisors and consultants, assisting colleagues and improving our approaches to hate crime throughout the force. But they also scrutinise hate crime incidents that are reported to us for quality and to derive learning. And that means an in-depth review by each of the 60 of 2 to 3 cases per week. Now, they often are able to give investigative advice and direction to the investigating officer, but through that process they also pick up learning and best practice, which we share and make sure is embedded into future training. In addition, we have a hate crime assurance panel to scrutinise the victim experience, and that goes from the first contact with a call handler right through the course of investigations and the follow-up victim care. And the panel includes colleagues from around the force, but it also includes colleagues from outside of the force, our external partners and victim service providers, but also the Crown Prosecution Service. And each meeting that happens has a different theme. So it may be religious hate crime, for example. We continue to work hard to build our relationships with our partners, with advocacy groups, with the voluntary sector, because with them we can support longer-term wraparound care for victims. And to coincide with Hate Crime Awareness Week, actually, our focus has been on placing some focus on hate crime directed at people with a disability. So we held a disability hate crime listening event last week to listen to victims and service providers to understand, again, impact and what we need to do to deliver a great service. And actually in the week we'll start the rollout of a new training programme with a specialist provider on disability hate crime and how to respond to it. So in summary, how do we stay victim focused? Well, a victim-centred, procedurally just approach is absolutely vital. As I've said, there is a significant amount of activity going on in the force and among our partnerships to continually improve. We do better on victim satisfaction with hate crime than we do more generally, and we do better with achieving a positive outcome rate, our solved rate for hate crime than other areas, but there is still room for improvement.
Well, thank you for that. And just to reiterate, please report. It's absolutely vital. And I suspect the development and the training of the right care, right person process with our partners will be very important, particularly in the arena of hate crime and mental illness. I'm now going to move to question 2, and this is the question that comes from the public in my post bag. I'm regularly contacted about antisocial behaviour and the police response to this. How do you ensure that your officers have the right mindset to antisocial behaviour and don't just dismiss it as ASB, it's just the children in the park?
Yeah, it's absolutely vital that our officers and staff understand the impact that antisocial behaviour can have on individuals and on our communities. And I think at a time when we're facing real concerns about police legitimacy and public confidence, that becomes even more important. Everyone deserves the right to feel safe in their homes and in their communities. I think the case of Bijan Ibrahimi casts a very long shadow over this force, probably over me and my service as well. And this, I think, and another very similar case to it, shaped my own mindset on antisocial behaviour. And I think I've been always very visible and clear about this in public and with staff. And I think it's right to say that Bijan's case has informed the way we deal with antisocial behaviour and much else, actually, in Avon and Somerset, more than any other case. The learning shaped how we assess reports when they're made, how we support victims, and how we work with partners to solve problems, including through our fantastic antisocial behaviour teams, our specialists, on how we use the wide range of civil powers that are available. I think it's right to say that antisocial behaviour is not a matter for the police alone. The responsibility for ensuring community safety is a shared one with the local authority, with other partners, with the communities themselves. But that partnership is a strong one in Avon and Somerset. But clearly, where there's criminality, where there are victims or communities that are vulnerable or persistently targeted, or where there are repeat and dangerous perpetrators, we, the police in Avon and Somerset clearly have, a leading role. And that role we've encapsulated in what we call our ASB service standard. In effect, that's our service promise to victims of ASB. And we're in the process of refreshing that again. We do look at it at least annually. And actually that's being branded this year just to the point of your question. It's not just ASB, that's the strapline. That's due for the launch this month. And it sets a clear standard and expectation on how officers and staff should deal with reports of antisocial behaviour. And to give a sense of our approach, all cases of antisocial behaviour that are targeted at a person, an individual, those are the ones that will tend to be primarily a policing matter. Even where there's no criminal offence, it's recorded in our records management system, just in the same way as a crime is recorded, and they're investigated as such with the attendant levels of victim contact and supervisory insight. So I think we do understand the importance of frontline officers and staff recognising and prioritising antisocial behaviour, and critically in understanding the substantial and sometimes life-changing impact it has on individuals and communities. And we'll continue to drive for improvement in our performance in this area. And we won't forget the lessons we learned from that case of Bishan Ibrahimi.
Chief Constable, thank you. I'm going to stray slightly into the technical here and the operational about recording. Sometimes something can start as antisocial behaviour and then drift into being criminal. How do we make sure that it's recorded correctly so that people understand it, and then we can look back at it and make sure that we've given the right response?
Yeah, so when people report antisocial behaviour to us, the first place we record is in our command and control system. And we will record it as they tell us, because that's how they experience it as antisocial behaviour. However, as you say, there are sometimes criminal offences involved in the behaviour that they report to us. So to give an example, someone may report a long-running dispute with a neighbour. But when we closely analyse the detail of that report, we may see that there are public order offences committed. There may be criminal damage, there may be harassment, there may be assaults involved. And in the past, we've sometimes focused on the antisocial behaviour as a problem as a whole and missed the recording of the constituent crimes. And in doing that, what we can do is we can miss opportunities to investigate, we can miss opportunities to disrupt and certainly to prosecute and to help solve the problem. Now, to prevent this, we've created some new question sets within our command and control system, within our control room, to better help call handlers identify those potential criminal offences right from the outset. And we've also partnered that with some training for the staff there who process these reports. So we've recently done a crime and data integrity audit, and that's shown an increase in us getting that right in compliance. So we've shown that we get it right 80% of the time instead of 46.4% of the time, which is the level of performance we had when HMIC FRS inspected us. So there's some improvement there. At the same time, we recognise that much of this is reported online as well. So our website is currently being redesigned on this issue, and it will have a fresh new look for online ASB reporting. in the coming weeks, and all the pages and forms are being updated and improved. And that too introduces some screening questions prior to someone actually getting into the body of the ASB report. And those screening questions have been designed to help us find any missed crimes, such as harassment for repeat victims or criminal damage for graffiti, and public order offences for incidents causing harassment, alarm or distress. So, and we're also making sure there's training for our inquiry office staff who often process those online reports as well. So we hope for increased compliance there. But it's still a challenge area for us. 80% is not good enough. But as you see, we've got work ongoing to try to improve and get it right, as well as critically those processes to audit how we're doing. We've seen some early improvements, but with the online reporting changes, we hope to see some more.
Chief Constable, thank you. And in a year's time, I look forward to coming back and asking the same question again, see what the levels are in a year. I'm now going to hand over to my Chief Staff.
Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 3, which is the Avon and Somerset Peel report, which is the main assessment of the force by the National Inspectorate body. Avon and Somerset Police in the last Peel report were graded as adequate at protecting vulnerable people. And one of the areas that was identified for improvement is that the constabulary should reduce the backlog of applications waiting to be processed, and that relates to the domestic violence disclosure scheme and also the child sex offender disclosure scheme. So I wondered if you could first briefly explain what those schemes are.
Absolutely, if I could answer that. Domestic violence disclosure schemes, quite commonly often referred to Clare's law actually, use common law powers to disclose information to potential victims of domestic abuse. They're now a statutory element of the Domestic Abuse Act, whereas previously when they were introduced in 2014, they were Home Office guidance really only. And that allows relevant police information to be disclosed to persons of risk under 2 routes, and that's the right to know and the right to ask. And the right to know element is usually initiated by a police officer, although other professionals can use that route. And most commonly it's where police officers become aware that a person is at risk because of their partner or ex-partner, and they can task our Lighthouse Safeguarding Unit to devise a disclosure which can be delivered. And that's where if someone feels there is risk, they have a right to ask the police to disclose information. Now that concern can be raised by yourself on behalf of someone else, for example a family member, a neighbour or a work colleague, but critically the disclosure is made to the victim, not necessarily the third party that made the application in the first place. Now applications can be made via our 101 telephone system, through an inquiry office, and now since May of this year through a digital form online. And actually that's been a critical step forward because since May we've received more requests for applications in the last 5 months to help more victims and empower their decision making for the future. So once a disclosure is made, there is then an expectation actually on the police to do something about that, to support the victim. It's not just a disclosure and walk away, and obviously in recognition of the current risk. So that might mean designing a safety plan or onward referral to other partners, or for example referring into MARIC, which is a multi-agency risk assessment conference. If there aren't grounds for disclosure, we would still communicate that to the victim, and again that doesn't mean there's nothing that can be done. So we still might want to consider a safety plan and suggest there could be some risk there that the victim needs to be vigilant to. Now our process from 2014 when they were first introduced until the summer of 2021 was for each of those disclosures to be allocated to the duty investigations team. But it was felt actually to be better, because it was such a specialist sort of part of the business, that one person would take that role on. But as the demand for this and the increasing number of applications we've had, we found that individual is a bottleneck, which has caused some of the delays that we've got at the moment. Similarly, the Child Sexual Offences Disclosure Scheme, sometimes referred to as Sarah's Law, follows exactly the same process as the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, but the focus here is on sexual offences and offenders who pose risk towards children. The risk management techniques are the same as the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, but critically that disclosure is made obviously to the parents of the child.
Okay, thank you, that's very clear. So have you actually been able to reduce those backlogs yet? And
yeah.
I guess also the second part of the question, will you be able to keep on top of them if you have, given the increased volume that you've just referenced?
So if I split that down into the 2 parts, so the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, there are still backlogs, I need to be clear about that. Clearly, we've had a huge number coming in. The individual themselves wasn't able to facilitate all of the disclosures, and we've had to put some more staff into that. Critically, we've now been able to allocate 3 full-time members of staff to join that individual. So that recruitment is taking place now internally, and they'll be in post very quickly. So the backlog is just over 300. That's applications, not disclosures. That's a similar level to when HMIC came in, but clearly with the volumes coming in, we've cleared some of the backlog and the numbers have stayed pretty static. But to reassure, we risk assess and triage those applications to make sure the highest risks are dealt with in the first instance. In relation to child sexual offences and the disclosure scheme there, it's in a much healthier position. There are no backlogs. There was a small backlog when HMIC came in, but that's been completely cleared and there's no backlog at all. But moving forwards critically, we want to move those 2 business areas together. There's lots of similarity and synergy within them, and we want to create a disclosure team which will provide resilience in both processes. And that will sit within our Lighthouse Safeguarding Unit, and we can probably share the learning and understand better the processes and make sure that we smooth out the backlog that we have now. So I think in summary, this is a good news that the online process is increasing the number of applications that we're receiving. It's really important that we can protect people, make people aware of potential risks to themselves, but we have got to get on top of the risk that we sit on in terms of the applications that are there. The learning, the sharing of resources gives me great confidence that actually that would be possible, and I would look forward to reporting back to you in due course the fact that those backlogs have been erased.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, when it's domestic abuse piece, the disclosure team and the Lighthouse team, are they able to recommend, for example, in South Gloucestershire and Bristol, the Drive project to help those perpetrators of domestic abuse?
So the disclosure made to the victim will obviously signpost to relevant support agencies to support the victim. The Drive process is a perpetrator programme, which may well be an outcome depending on other factors that are taken into account by the police. So
but it is joined up.
Focused, yes.
That's the point. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you both very much this afternoon for coming in to do this. It's really these meetings are really important to show that transparency and to show holding you to account for the delivery of the police and crime plan, and I'm very grateful. Our next meeting is on the 14th of November at 1400 hours, and until next time, stay safe.